But anyway, all right, so I'm DJ and welcome to One Shots Tavern. Today, I am talking with Wes from Roll for Impact and the Stranger Pod. Welcome, Wes.
Thank you, DJ. I appreciate it, and I appreciate your time, and I'm excited to talk to you.
Absolutely. I've been wanting to have you on for a while, ever since you first messaged me and were just like, hey, how's Kickstarter work? And I was like, kinda.
Yep. When you say kinda, you mean an hour and a half dissertation on everything you've learned about Kickstarter.
Yeah, that's true. I definitely kind of just hyper fixated and just unloaded everything that I could for you. Listen, you got to like give the tools out to other people to be successful. You can't just hoard them all in.
It was incredibly helpful. I am just poking fun because I learned more about Kickstarter in that hour and a half conversation with you than I've known my entire life.
I'm glad I could be of help. So let's give the audience a little bit of background on you. So, Wes, tell me about yourself.
Yes, so I am a former engineer turned entrepreneur turned disenfranchised from the capitalist system turned I just want to do D&D and eventually make money doing D&D.
Yep.
And so basically now what I do is I create super stylized artistic game boards and pair that with really heavy editing and soundscaping to create this like artistic representation of D&D. It's like what does this sound like if it was a movie or cinema? So and basically I've been doing that for the last year. I'm now starting to release new shows and it seems like people like it. So just doing more.
The Stranger Pod is beautiful. You kind of use some new tools that I hadn't really seen used often in the actual play space. You were doing light up picture frames for each of your players, so that way it would highlight who was speaking. And then from there, now you're kind of moving more into that animated space, so like multiple frames of talking and all that. Tell me about the process kind of behind that and what led you to this epiphany of a format.
Yeah, so I approach this a bit like a business problem because if I want to make money doing this, I need to eventually get people's attention. And so I thought I wanted to create shorts and videos that immediately surprised you by the quality of the artistry in it. And so that led me down a rabbit hole, similarly to you learning Kickstarter and then unloading it onto me, of learning all the different options I had for software. And so basically what I settled on was using actual animation tools to animate voices. And you see this on YouTube, like you play a music track and you see the bars go up and down, volume. Right. It's the same technology, except I'm telling it to do more complicated things. With a game board we're working on now, has fully animated characters. So they'll sit idly, move their hands, scratch their chin, whatever. And then when the player talks, the character talks and moves their arm and moves their mouth. Basically, I do this using the full suite of Adobe tools. I use 5 programs to go from recording all the way to publishing a video. So it's a lot. Do you have any questions on that process?
Yeah, okay, so it's a lot. You pay an artist to make the beautiful set pieces, the portraits, the animation frames and stuff like that. And then you use a program or a plugin for OBS and Discord, right?
So most people who do anything animated with playing TTRPGs are going to use React, I believe it's called, a program that you plug in Discord to OBS and your picture changes and lights up when you speak. It's simple, but it works.
Right.
I wanted to do more with it. So I actually import all of these audio tracks into Adobe After Effects, where I rig the artist's creation to animations that, either I or I commission, depending on how complicated I want it to be. Yeah. It goes from Adobe After Effects to Adobe Premiere Pro. I have 10, 12, 14 layers of looping animations, and then an overlay of the animation that popped up out of After Effects. And then from there, because obviously we live in a world where short form content is now super important.
Oh yeah.
There's another layer of Premiere Pro where I take this game board, which we design with intention to have that horizontal aspect, but then be able to be vertically sliced.
Yeah.
So I can switch it up like a podcast when, like you see a podcast switch between the different people speaking. I do exactly that and turn it into a short on a vertical format.
Wow.
So it's actually a really integrated process from start to finish.
Yeah.
And totally utilizes that background in engineering that I started from in the industry.
That's awesome. Yeah. Okay, cool. So that allows you to get more granular with it, allows you to, animate per track, I assume, with Adobe After Effects. I'm not super familiar with Adobe After Effects. The Photoshop's about all I'm familiar with in that realm. But, it sounds great because, like, we use Descript, we use Squadcast, right? And a lot of it is, like, I'll be honest, it's kind of lazy for us, right? It's a lot of the work is kind of done for us through like, automatic audio processing and such. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It depends on how, clean the audio they receive was. But it's quite the process. So, all right, let's dial it backwards a little bit.
Yep.
To a younger Wes. Younger Wes is an engineer. Younger Wes is doing great. What made you switch from being an engineer to, your temporary gig in the capitalist world over to, the thing that a lot of people end up experiencing, which is the disenchantment into like, oh, maybe I want to do something that
means something?
That means something. Yeah.
It's tough to say. I mean, gosh, this is a human condition question.
Yeah.
I mean, we all want to find fulfillment in life.
Yes,
and
we do.
And of course, we need to have food on the table. We need to have a roof over our head. There's just some things that we can't compromise on. But then after that, what's the point? Like, why do we get up in the morning, go to work? Why are we growing our savings account, even if we have a savings account in today's economy?
Yeah.
And basically what happened was one day I woke up, I had a pretty traumatic entrepreneurial experience where things did not go the way I'd planned. And I just sat up in the morning and thought, why am I so stressed? Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And then that evening I had a D&D session with my home game. And, I played D&D, and when you get into playing a TTRPG, you can get immersed in it. And if you're a DM, there's so much to think about. The characters, the world, the storytelling. And at the end of it, in a really great session, your players are just thrilled and happy. Like, the emotion that can be created from telling an incredible story is so rewarding as a DM.
Oh, yeah.
And then I stopped playing D&D, and I had to go to bed that evening, and I said, I just want to do that. I not D&D, but I want to create emotion in people. I want the work that I do to not provide a return on investment for investors, but like to provide a return on investment for our happiness.
Yep.
And so that's when the journey started of like, what if we publish this? What if we publish it really well? What if we make this super high quality?
Yeah.
And I'd never seen anybody do that before. And it clicked for me when I watched my first episode of Worlds Beyond Number, because for the first time I realized that D&D is not just a parasocial relationship, just bunch of kids having fun on the internet, but can actually be like a real and compelling storytelling tool. And I'm like, well, what if we did that? What if we told these really compelling stories? And Worlds Beyond Number does it so well, where I'm not there necessarily. I mean, of course, we love Brendan Lee Mulligan. We love Abria Iyengar. Like,
right.
These people are legends in the space. But you're there to listen to the story being told. And that clicked. I'm like, why am I doing this business entrepreneurship when I could be, touching people's hearts and minds and and providing to the world in a meaningful way?
Absolutely. I'm a game master for hire. Everybody who listens knows, right? It's one of the main things I do. That is my form of income. But I ended up having to jump to it after I lost my job, after I had a bit of a meltdown at work, right? Had that autistic stress just build right up, the
Mm-hmm.
ADHD, it all culminated. And then I lost my job. And for the first 6 months or so, I was just like, I was desperately looking for another job. Anything that I felt was going to be as, financially beneficial as that job was, the good insurance, the good culture I needed. And I was like, I want it, I want it, I want it. And then I eventually reached the point where I was like, but wait, I haven't had a panic attack in months. I feel significantly better, right? My stress levels are way down. Let's stop, think about it, right? I was running a couple of D&D sessions each week. I had started doing a paid game about 4 months prior to losing my job, and I was just like, I think it's time. I'm gonna try this full time.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I did. I hopped in, started my first game, for a bit. I was earning about $110 a week. I was like, okay, cool, let's start in, right?
Yeah.
My unemployment ran out. It was money, right?
Mm-hmm.
It meant that I could pay some of the bills while, my wife who sells cars, that way she wasn't shouldering all of it. And
Mm-hmm.
then I slowly started adding games. I think I'm up to 6 paid games now. So, it's all of a sudden I'm earning roughly what I was earning in that job. And
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, this is so much better because all of a sudden I have players telling me things like, hey, you know, you have given me such a great gift by running this game. And I'm like, yeah, but you pay me. And they're like, yeah, but I receive so much more than my money is worth by playing in this game with you, right?
Yeah.
I had a player who, it wasn't the most social person in the world because they had gone through a lot. And all of a sudden now it's like, oh, cool. I'm really close friends with them. The other players are really close friends with them. We want to play so many games together. And when I hear a player, I mean, this happened yesterday where a player, I wasn't sure how my Saturday game was going. We're on session 4. It's not me running a module, it's just fully homebrew using the Cypher system. And one of the players at the end of the session, I was genuinely like, am I going to keep doing this game? I'm worried. I always, the gremlin, right? Of like, is what
Mm-hmm.
you're doing good? And then one of the players at the end of the session was like, this has been the greatest campaign I have ever been a part of. And he's on the older end of one of my players. I think he's
Mm-hmm.
in his 40s, might be in his low 50s. And so he's been playing for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, this has been one of the greatest campaigns I have ever been a part of. And I'm just like, oh, well, obviously that game's going to keep going. I feel
Mm-hmm.
refreshed. I'm going to keep going. But all of a sudden, I feel as though I'm touching people. Am I earning a ton of money? No. Am I earning, enough? Yeah.
Feel like
It feels
what do you?
great.
Yeah.
It's so good. It feels amazing. One, because I get to tell these stories with people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we get to tackle difficult issues like capitalism and the estrangement or a terrible government doing terrible things and family issues, right? I had a player who I've been friends with for a long time, over 10 years now,
Mm-hmm.
and he says to me after we had a bit of a session with his player character's dad showed up,
Mm-hmm.
right? And in it, he was estranged from his father and not a good relationship. And so we played it like that, real rough, butting heads. And he ends up like saying something, and like, the dad kind of sees like, oh, he's being a little bit of a dick. All right, let's calm it down, throw a compliment. And then
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the session, my buddy goes, hey, you just gave me the affirmation that my dad never gave me. And of course, I have to turn off my microphone because I have a moment where I'm like, okay, cool. Now I'm going to cry. And he's like, I had my microphone off because I was crying the entire time. And it's like, oh, man, this is so like D&D tabletop games are so important to
Mm-hmm.
the players. And not just the players, but they're super important to the game master as well. So, Wes, how did you get into tabletop games? When was the first time you picked up the dice?
Yep. So surprisingly, it wasn't that long ago. Maybe 4 or 5 years total. I had a friend who basically said, "Hey Wes, we should try this. This seems fun." And I don't know what it was, but I feel like for people who don't play TTRPGs, there's like a little bit of an apprehension and a stigma. And so I was like, I guess I'll try it, but I can't really say that this is something I'd be interested in. Boy, was I wrong. I was super interested in it. It kind of goes back to how we engage with the world as children. Children play pretend, and there is a purpose behind the game of pretend.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
kind of prepping you for existing in the world. You're able to try out scenarios. And I am convinced that TTRPGs, the method of a collaborative imagination, one of the reasons it works so well, one of the reasons I feel like your player had that opportunity is because you get to experience the world in these specific scenarios that you choose. You can go into those willfully, and that's what I felt when I first started playing
Yeah.
is, you know, all of a sudden I could be in these scenarios that I couldn't be in real life, but they mean something
Yep.
in real life. These are impactful scenarios. They mean something to me. It's my character after all. And that's basically what proliferated my love for the genre.
Yeah. I mean, and it's true too, because, like, back to the examples that I gave earlier, it gives you the chance sometimes to have the conversation that you wouldn't normally have. And I personally was not always the most able to talk to people. I've not always had confidence. I still don't really, but I'm really good at faking it. I played a super charismatic character in my first game. It was in 2010. And I played a paladin elf. It was a charisma class. I had a lot of talking to do. And all of a sudden, I'm having conversations and, like, being able to speak in a way that, I was never good at doing. And it's nice. All of a sudden, you start to build into the characters bits of yourself.
Yeah.
Maybe it's things that you wish you were. Maybe it's things that you hope you never become. Maybe it's how you see yourself. Every character we play in some way is a reflection of an aspect of ourself. And I think that's super good and healthy for people to be able to experience and to express their woes, their hopes, their dreams, everything, so that they can really kind of like understand themselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah, to some extent, it's an act of self-love. It's self-exploration. I mean, in therapy, one of the therapeutic practices I've seen before is playing roles, is pretending not to be yourself, and talking through something as if you're a third party. I think there's a lot, like, I think there's a good logic behind the idea to make TTRPGs more prevalent even than they are, just because of the benefits of like to explore yourself.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's, I think seeing, because we have been seeing it a lot lately, D&D clubs popping up in schools, right? Or D&D being used as therapy, or just tabletop games in general, right? It doesn't have to be Dungeons and Dragons. It can be any role-playing game, especially in situations where you need to be able to pick it up and put it down really quickly. So something like Powered by the Apocalypse, or Mothership. I don't know about doing a horror game for therapy, but for some people it might work.
Weak sides.
Explore our dark sides. Okay. Okay, cool. So you got into games about 4 years ago. You had your big switch into wanting to produce something. You decided that you were going to throw everything into it. You're not the only person that I've met with a similar experience. There's always that driven person in every industry. I have a friend who did the same thing. He worked at Guitar Center. He was like the #1 salesperson at Guitar Center in the country for like a few years. So he was doing really well. And then he decided, I don't want to do this. I'm going
Yeah.
to instead make community music videos. And so we did that for a while. Then COVID happened, but we won't talk about that. Have you met Cameron from the Panic Table?
Yes. Never on a voice chat, but we have connected, I believe.
Okay, good. Because, like, one, you're not terribly far from each other.
You mean proximity, so I can go knock on their
Proximity is
door.
great.
Yep.
Exactly. But two, like, he did something very similar. Not, he didn't, like, quit his job or anything. In fact, he is utilizing his workspace. He is utilizing his workspace, motorcycle outside the window, to make the Panic Table. And he convinced all of them, like, hey, we could make a really awesome, high budget, like, well done actual play. And so that's what they did at their studio somewhere in New York. And that's kind of what they do. I see a lot of parallels between the two of you in a way, whereas you went a very stylistic kind of point with it, which I love because there is a uniqueness to it. So all of a sudden, we see the Panic Table, we see the Stranger Pod pop up, and it's just two very high quality, beautiful, well produced actual plays that put me to shame every single day. But
It resonates with me deeply, and I'm sure it would resonate with the Panic Table and possibly with you as well. It's Japanese, and it's called Ikigai. Are you familiar?
It's basically familiar.
It's basically, here, I've got a cat with me now. It's basically where the fulfillment from your job meets what can make you money, meets does it do good for society. Basically, it's that place where we want to be. And I think when you meet people who are so driven in a very particular thing, it's because even if it doesn't make money, you know that it's good for society and you like it, it's good for you, and maybe it could make you money. And so I think it's that striving to really capture the life calling, that something that means something to you. I think that's what
I wish America was better, but also I wish that America really allowed a lot more of that too, right? Because you look at Canada, for example, Canada hands out money to people who create things that are Canadian all the time. Thousands of dollars. Sometimes they will pay.
Wait,
yeah.
Is this real? Wait, why are we in the US? I should be moving to Canada.
It's apparently hard to move there, but but I think you would be fine, and I would just have to run a lot more games for them to be like, all right, fine, we'll approve it.
I heard expensive.
But essentially, their whole thing is like they want to push Canadian art, right? And so that's how all of a sudden you get bands that are nationally sponsored, like Nickelback. Right? Nickelback was one of those bands that received money from the Canadian government in order to put their music out there into the world. I think Justin Bieber had a very similar thing. And it's not just music. It's all art forms. And it's not that they'll pay you to do the art. It's more so like they look at your art and they go, yeah, that is sufficient quality. That's good. That makes Canada look good. And so they do that. And they're not the only country that does that. I wish I could remember exactly which ones, but I believe there's a country like Singapore, something like that does that as well. And there's a couple of European countries that do it. And it's basically just like, hey, we can compete with American entertainment. We just need to give our artists the ability to do so. Whereas in the United States, it's very much kill or be killed, you know, just chaos. It doesn't matter if you're in a band, it doesn't matter what you're doing, you are competing with so many people at all times. So much so that in that competition, it feels like something's always lost in the art form because you have to specifically cater what you're doing.
Your art form has to provide a return for shareholders.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it's not valid art. Be doing it doesn't provide a return for shareholders.
Exactly.
He said very sarcastically, to be clear.
Yeah, and that's the American mindset, right? Is
Hmm.
if what you're doing is not producing capital, then there is no point to it,
Yeah.
and therefore should be given up on. Whereas if you look at our founding fathers, and I want to say it was John Adams who said this, but he said something along the lines of, we go to war so that our kids can study architecture, and so their kids can study music and art,
Yeah.
right? But somehow we got stuck in that go to war and, do the thing that provides money
Hmm.
ever since the founding of this country. Whereas our founding fathers genuinely looked at it and or thought that we would be able to get to a point where we would value the arts, all of them, literature, music, painting, and that would be as equal as the other, you know, things, which, and it's funny because if you think about it, is a very almost communist or socialist way of
Hmm.
thinking about society and where society should head. Because, in that society, you look at it and it's like, cool, people do the thing that they want to do, right? Obviously, people go where their skill set is,
Yeah.
and they create or they work in a factory. People are choosing to do the things that they like, right?
Hmm.
You can like working in a factory. I know plenty of people who love working in shops.
Hmm.
They would never want to do anything else. They want to sit at their CNC machine, they want to set it up, they want to press the button, they want to see it go. Like,
Hmm.
that is all they could ever imagine doing, and that is good, right?
Yeah.
We should all be able to live that passion
Yeah.
in our lives. So that's my view on
That's
it.
the no, and I completely
Yeah.
agree with you. Like, and it, we talk about communism, and the baseline, besides all of the very much greater context I won't begin to profess on, is good for all people. You want everybody
Yeah.
to. The founding fathers say, we want everybody to be able to practice art. We say we want the people at our table to derive a deeper meaning from playing TTRPG.
Yeah.
All of this is the same thing. It's we care about other people and we care about humanity, and to some extent we care about ourselves because we want to contribute to humanity. And we talk about shareholder returns sarcastically because most regular people don't see that as the greatest contribution to humanity.
It's funny because, like, you look at that and you look at that philosophy of, like, good for everyone and everyone being able to pursue those things that they're good at, the things that they love.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at the emergence of artificial intelligence in the world.
That's a
Yeah.
big topic.
It's a huge topic. Now, disclosure or, whatever here. I think AI is neat,
Mhm.
right? I think it is a useful tool in a lot of aspects in creativity. I don't think that it should be used to replace human creativity, right?
Mhm.
Specifically, we are seeing art and writing prompts and everything. Now, in that perfect society, you have something like AI and robotics pop up, and the smart conclusion, right, is that you replace the jobs that people actually don't want to do. In a moneyless society, they replace all of those jobs. Instead, what we have is, I saw someone talk about, is AI going to replace game masters? And Start Playing posted a video specifically that was like, no, it's not going to happen. And I don't think it's going to happen. I think Wizards of the Coast would like for it to happen,
Mhm.
because that was the thing that they wanted to build, was like the AI game master as a part of their whole shtick with D&D Beyond after they bought it and their virtual tabletop. But I don't think, personally, you can ever truly replace a human being when it comes to art in any form. And game mastering is art.
Yeah.
Fully.
I think it's what we're hinting at here is like the human connection. To imply that an AI will be able to replace the dungeon master is to imply that an AI can develop a human connection,
Right.
a meaningful human connection. Like, And you know what? If technology gets there, I'm good. I give up. I'm retiring to the forest, and everybody can enjoy their AI companions. But, the thing we talked about of providing meaning to our players and providing value in this deep and meaningful way, an AI would have to understand what human value is. Like,
Yeah.
is an AI going to recreate this touching moment that kind of brings somebody back to their relationship with their father? Will
Right.
emulate what that experience is like. But I think the day that we are able to replace genuine human connection with AI is also the day that it's time for me to hang up my coat and go live a hermit lifestyle, because that's scary.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. Because then what is the point?
What is
There's religion, there's all of that, but like even in that, even in, whatever religion, whatever spiritual practice, there's still a human need to be human.
hmm
And in my opinion, being human means being able to create and to express. And so you look at that and you go, oh, cool. AI is taking over the world. They're doing the jobs, they're doing whatever, and we'll never probably see a society, a utopian society in which AI and robots do the hard labor and people create things. It feels hollow to me,
hmm
that idea of future. The AI what do I need an advertisement, let me write in the prompt of what I need,
hmm
there it is, and it becomes sanitized. And even with architecture, where we see, like, back in the 90s, everything was more colorful, right? Everything was genuinely like designed to kind of pull you in, from McDonald's to, Arby's, being
hmm
shaped like a hat, whatever. And then now you drive downtown and it's just like brutalist squares
Yeah.
everywhere. And that's depressing to me. I love color. I love strange shapes. I want to see things be fun. And, I feel like AI is along those lines of further going into the sanitization route of human creation. It looks good, right? But you can always kind of like feel that there is just something not good, not full with it.
Yeah. And
So that's my view.
look at also the place that AI lives in our minds, as a place as to the place where art lives in our minds. We picture a 1980s, 1990s office cubicle,
Yeah.
and movies that depict that show that in a gray color tone.
Yep.
Nobody likes that image.
No.
Uh, few people do. And when we discuss AI, we see it in a very similar light. It's this humanless, colorless output of, here's what you asked for, I'm giving it to you. And art is the opposite. Art is color, it's creativity. And so, I think AI can be used creatively as a tool. In the same way that you can pick up a paintbrush and paint a picture, you can pick up AI and you can tell it, I want this, I want that, get some ideas, get some drafts, and then go ahead and interpret and create something yourself.
Yeah.
But I don't think AI will, at least in my mind, ever live in the artistic world. It's a
Yep.
paintbrush for me.
It's a tool. And so like I've used it as a tool where it's just like, uh my players hand me 3 or 4 page backstories, I read it. um
Yep.
I am exactly summarize. I am not going to always have to dig through their entire character story. So
hmm
my favorite way to use AI is to take that entire backstory, throw it in, and say, can you please create for me a character dossier about this person? And it
hmm
does. And it's like age, name, where were they born, who is their family, little recap of like some stuff, the themes. Awesome.
hmm
There we go. That's all I needed.
Yeah.
I can reference that forever. um I don't want I've toyed with like, okay, this is where my players are at, right? This is the themes that have been happening. What do you think? And it spits out something and it's like, okay, cool. Hate all of that,
Hmm.
uh, throw it out. I always get a good idea afterward, but mostly because I look at all the things I hate about
Hmm.
about the prompt, or not the prompt, but the result from the prompt, and I go, gross. I'm not a fan. Let me, instead do it myself. I think it's almost more of a confidence booster in a way, because you're just like, you look at it and you immediately just start tearing it apart.
I can do better than that. Yeah.
I could do way better than that, and it's great.
I actually have a pro
Fantastic.
tip. A pro
Yeah.
tip on using AI for DMing. So AI right now is glorified search results.
Yes, absolutely.
Um,
It's referencing billions of entries.
Exactly. So use it to like assign tropes to a character. If you put in a backstory and the AI interprets that backstory and says this reads a lot like this trope of a character, then you can, as an author, as a writer, as a DM, take that trope and then create something more with that. Uh,
Mhm.
I would use AI more like a search engine to categorize what you're doing and not to give you the final output. I'll tell
Yeah,
you, I've
absolutely.
heard people DM from AI output. You can tell. You can
Oh yeah,
immediately tell because the writing is always the same. The sky was
always.
orange like the blank blank,
Yep.
of always that same simile that's used. But using it like a search engine to get categories and use those instead, that's
Yeah,
very helpful.
absolutely. Fantastic. Well, okay, let's talk about Roll for Impact. Let's talk about the Stranger Pod. Let's talk about the future that you are planning. Give the players, not the players. They're not players.
They
The
could be players.
listeners. You know what? We should call the audience the players. Anyway, uh, give the audience a sales pitch for the Stranger Pod, because I could just be like, it's beautiful, it's well acted, the players aren't like the typical people you expect to be in a actual play, and they're awesome because of it.
Hmm.
You tell me, you give me the pitch.
Imagine the best movie you've seen, where you combine an incredible story with great sound effects and music. And sometimes when the music comes at the right moment, you feel it, like it brings a tear to your eye. I hope I can elicit that response, but this is just the dream, right? Basically, what I make is TTRPG cinema. And so there's no ambient music that plays for 30 minutes. No, every minute is scored with what emotion is happening in this scene. Every sound effect, like we talk to our editors about, like, do you want the audience to feel uncomfortable right now? Let's put a kettle. Let's put a kettle on in the background and start that whistling sound because
Yep.
this is an uncomfortable. So like every minute of an hour and a half session, in the case of Stellaris Obscura, which just came out, is a 3 hour session, is painstakingly scored. And something new we started doing as well is on a 3 hour session, let's say, we've scripted maybe 5-10 minute scenes occasionally to give greater context to characters and backstories. So really, this feels like listening to a movie. And it all comes from the origin of a single TTRPG table session. It's actually incredible
Yeah.
because we play D&D, for example, for 4 hours or for an hour and a half or for 2 hours. And then we spend maybe 100 hours editing it to turn it into the final product. So if that sounds interesting to you, that's something to look into, is audio cinema TTRPG.
Fantastic. I highly recommend watching The Stranger Pod, and of course this new one as well. I have not started with that yet, but I haven't really finished Stranger Pod stuff yet. So it really is a unique and fun experience. I personally, I know everybody's different on how they consume actual plays, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some people really like to see the people, right? And that's kind of a typical way to do an actual play. You've got the tables set up, you've got the cameras looking at them, you've got the game master, all really pioneered by Critical Role and Dimension 20 for like that very much like personalized view.
Hmm.
I get really distracted, as you might be able to tell from this conversation that has included my political viewpoints and everything else along with
AI,
it.
table
AI,
satisfaction. Yep.
all of it, yeah. Um, I need something beautiful and simple. And so there's something right along those lines with the Stranger Pod, where it is beautiful, simple, well done. That allows me to look at it, to watch it, and to go, oh, yeah, cool. I'm looking over here at this character. I'm looking over here at this character. And it really kind of keeps me in. So, yeah, it's beautiful. Definitely check it out. You can find it. Well, here, you tell me everywhere that you can find it.
The simplest place to find The Stranger is strangerpod.com, but all of our productions are released on YouTube at Roll Impact.
Fantastic. We're going to have all the links for Wes, for Roll Impact, for the Stranger Pod, everything in the bottom down below. Wes, is there anything that you would like to cover that we have not covered yet?
I just want to say what we talked about, having satisfaction through what we do in life, where we started this conversation, hearing your compliments to The Stranger and to the shows that I do, that's it. That's really it. Thank you for saying such nice things about it, for enjoying it, and
Absolutely.
I hope to make more stuff like this in the future.
Please do.
I will try. I
Don't
won't let
stop.
you down.
Don't stop until every penny is gone. Just make beautiful things for people to enjoy, because like we need more beauty in this world, and tabletop games really helped with that. And seeing them done in different ways like this, I think provides to that art form in a way that feels good. It's doesn't feel like I am watching mindless content, and sometimes I just really need something that's not mindless in a world that wants me to scroll and scroll and scroll forever. Wes, thank you so much for joining me today here on One Shots Tavern. Everyone in the audience, if you like what we are doing, please check out oneshotstavern.com. There you can find a link to all of our social media accounts. We use some more than others, but we appreciate the follow anyway. Our Patreon, of course, we are going to start to edit the videos for these podcasts and kind of begin to roll them out there as well. Also, we are going to be uploading each of these episodes individually to our Patreon. So that way you can always get an ad-free experience. I know that we don't have ads here on the RSS feed yet, but someday that is the goal. And once we do have ads, you'll probably want to escape them, and the Patreon will be the best place to do that. But as always, I'm DJ. This is One Shots Tavern, and we'll see you next time.